Hello, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages. This is Curt Marcucci. I'm doing this interview, and this means a lot to a lot of Tommy Bolin fans. So, what I and Floyd from Tommy Bolin Appreciation Society want to do is we want to interview people that have somehow, way, shape, or form had something to do with the life of the music of Tommy Bolin. And today we are truly honored, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, the author of what's been become known as the Bible for Tommy Bolin. We have with us today author Greg Prato. Greg, how you doing out there in Long Island?
Pretty
Great.
good.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yes, I was going to say thanks, Curt and Floyd, for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate it as well. And I just want to say before we do anything that Floyd has 30 copies of Touched by Magic that you have autographed. And what we're going to do is Floyd's selling the books. You can reach out to Floyd. We'll have a link under the video. And all profits from the sale of that book are going to go to Bobby Bolin, whose father, Johnny Bolin, recently passed away. So you're helping us do some good for members of the Bolin family. We appreciate it.
No problem. Anything I can do to help.
You
Great.
bet. And also, we got some hardcovers coming in, and Greg was real generous with us, and did something very nice for us on that. Greg, one thing I do want to say as we get started here, you've helped solve a lot of issues that we had on our site. We would generally get people who called in, and it would generally be about after 2 or 3 beers or 4 and a little weed. And my God in heaven, people had the answers to what happened to Tommy Bolin. They would have incredible stories, how they figured it happened, why it happened. And we finally got to the point, and Johnny was behind us on it too, that we didn't discuss it at all. It was like one of those, like some families, we have a horrible, horrible death.
Mhm.
And I can recall having that when I was growing up, and somebody said, you know what, we don't talk about it. We don't say anything about it, and we're better off for it. And I thought, boy, that's, different than how I live today. But it was part of that. But we really had so much nonsense that would come out of that. And your book, like I said, truly spread the. I don't know how you did what you did, but it was excellent. 50 exclusive interviews,
Mhm.
and the format that you use, where you're basically taking their quotes and allowing them to interact through that book, through the different ages and different parts. I've never seen something like that, and I really, really like it. I like it
Thank
a
you.
lot. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I
yeah.
love that as well. To me, that reminded me of one of my favorite books, The Dirt by Motley Crue. Kind of the same thing. Everybody who's got anything to do with a particular story all chimes in on their version. I thought that worked fantastic. That was great.
Yeah, the reason
Mhm.
why I did that, yeah, people call it the oral history format. And the reason why I did that with this book in particular was you were getting the story straight from the horse's mouth. Because I always wondered about Tommy's story and specifically about his passing. So I figured it would be best just to speak to as many people as possible that either knew him or were admirers of his music and have them tell the story.
Great.
Mhm.
Um, you know, One question I got for you, Greg. What got you into the writing thing, and specifically, what brought you towards music?
Well, the writing thing just happened by accident. I was out of college in the mid '90s, mid to late '90s. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I got a job as a customer service rep at a now defunct music magazine. And I saw how easy writing was, and I was always good at writing in school and always good in English. And I've been a fan of rock music since I was like a little kid, so I've known a lot about rock history and things like that. And I discovered the music of Tommy Bolin in the early '90s when the Ultimate box set came out. I used to read all the guitar magazines like Guitar World and Guitar for the Practicing Musician at the time. And there was some very nice write-ups about Tommy Bolin. I know there was an issue of Guitar World that had the tab to, I believe, Quadrant 4.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
also
In fact,
talked
I
a
had
bit
that
about,
issue.
yeah, and it talked a bit about the Ultimate box set. And back in those days, of course, it wasn't like today. You couldn't just open up your computer and check out some Tommy Bolin music. And there were no radio stations or anything playing Tommy Bolin. So I happened to go into my local record store maybe like a year after the box set came out, and they had it for sale. So I just on a whim bought it. And back then it was a bit of a gamble because it wasn't cheap, and you'd sometimes buy things and they wouldn't turn out to be good. And I remember I bought that, and I thought the box set was pretty good because the first two songs are from Zephyr. But what really blew my mind was when it got to the James Gang material, and also of course Quadrant 4. That was what blew my mind. And then I heard the selections from Teaser, and also Alphonse Moves On, and also Private Eyes. And then I became a big Tommy Bolin fan after that.
What did it for me, what got me into music, I played bass guitar, was Nikki Sixx. Seeing Shout at the Devil as a 13, 14-year-old kid, was like, that's what I want to do. I want to hit my hair all crazy and have blood all over myself and everything. And I had the tour program from the Shout at the Devil tour, and there was a bio for each member. And for Nikki Sixx, his favorite album was Tommy Bolin Teaser. And I grew up in Woodstock, Illinois, town of 15,000 people. I go to this little outlet store, and they had these nice price cassettes, and I see Teaser for sale for $4. Now, like you said, you buy something, you don't know what you're going to get. Back then, I was bitten quite a bit. Hey, this looks good. You listen to it. Wow, this is garbage. So knowing that that was Nikki Sixx's favorite album, and what the Motley Crue sound was, I was expecting something similar off of Teaser. Obviously, it was not, but there was a magic there in the guitar. Every song is its own entity. Every song has its own guitar tone to it. You don't see that too often today in rock music. It's like, okay, set the guitar tone, boom, run. Whereas Tommy, each song got individual treatment. I fell in love with it from there.
Yeah.
And I remember waiting for that box set to come out as well. And yeah, I loved that. So there was nowhere else to get any of that stuff. You weren't going to go into a record store and find Quadrant 4. You weren't going to find those James Gang albums. The only one you were going to find was Private Eyes, which they reissued either right before or right after that box set came out. That was, me living in a small town, that's the only way we were going to find it. There was no used record stores or anything.
Yeah, actually, I remember Johnny Bolin once told me that's supposedly the only Tommy album that reached gold certification, Private Eyes, because that's always been in print throughout the years.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about the process of writing this book. It's this was your we were talking before. You mentioned that this was your second book.
My second book ever, yeah, from 2008. And not to brag, but I've done so many books since then. I've done either close to or over 40 books, if you could believe that.
Wow.
And you have every right to brag. You've got some great stuff out there. You got every right to brag.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah. But this book, what it was just, again, it was just, I always wanted to read a book about Tommy Bolin. To the best of my knowledge, there wasn't any book. So I got in contact with Johnny at the time and told him my intentions. He was all for it, and he was on board with helping me with him doing interviews and also hooking me up with people. So that's pretty much, I just got the ball rolling at the time. I can't recall how long it took. It probably took about a year, I would think, to do everything, to put it all in, put everything in place. And this has been a pretty steady seller over the years. It's available as paperback, Kindle, hardcover, and also audio version with me narrating.
Wow. Yeah. I'll have to check that out.
Right. I worked through the audio version in the last couple weeks, and I found it was chilling. It was and again, I guess I have some real feelings that go into that whole thing. I grew up 120 miles from Tommy, and I saw him with James Gang, and I also saw him on his, I guess what I'm going to call his last ride, when he showed up with Johnny Bolin, and we met Tommy and Johnny, and Tommy played at University of South Dakota, about 35 miles away from Sioux City, Iowa, and he had just finished with Deep Purple and was working his way down to Miami, and but it was very interesting when I saw him with James Gang, and again because he was in our area, and we would hunt it, we would hunt down music of his, but we got a teaser, we had all those different items, and then now it's pretty easy to find the remnants of Fever, which there's a lot of stories around that, but I don't know where that came from. But there's a big legend out there that's blooming on that. And I'd love to hear what your story on. I'd heard that the tapes were stolen from the Bolin house when Tommy died.
Okay. Yeah,
And
honestly, that's something that I don't think I really just out of everything with Tommy Bolin's life, I didn't really get too much into that because I focused primarily on his whole career in life.
got
A
it.
little bit after his passing, well, there's obviously the whole chapter about his actual passing, but I didn't really touch too much on the Fever box set. But yeah, but I have heard things similar to what you just said that no one could really put their finger on what happened. Did you ever have an opportunity to ask Johnny about that?
I did not. We did not get into the Fever questions, and honestly, I felt
It's 1 o'clock.
blessed, I guess, in that through these last few years, Johnny had asked me a number of times. He'd kind of say, "Hey, is there any stuff you want? Is there any? Do you have any questions that you'd like answered?"
Mhm.
And mine were real basic. But like I said, the Fever thing. I got actually got a bootleg copy because I figure that's the best way I know to treat a bootlegger
Mhm.
is have my friend download a version of it, and I went through that, and a great deal of that was used later on stuff like Whips and Chains, part 1 and 2, and as I listened, there was an immediate criticism that album went through, and they said, you know what, real big album, it's 16 CDs, and the irony is, and they'd all say, but terrible quality, terrible, it's 8th generation. But my goodness, I mean, I have found that to be filled with a lot of gems, and for me, I think it's pretty good quality.
Mhm.
But it's just nice to see that it's out there. But I appreciate what you've done with this book and with the interviews. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'm doing a little thing to keep this interview going. We had the technical issues, so I'm going to upgrade to the Pro so that I can keep this going, and I'll probably edit this comment out.
Okay.
There we go. Thank God for PayPal.
Mhm.
There we go. All right, we're good. All right. I remember I talked to Johnny after he was actually up here in Berwyn, Illinois after Bolin Fest. He came in to see Greg Hughes play in St. Charles, Illinois. And, he went backstage and was talking with Glenn. And Glenn had finally gotten his money from Deep Purple. Finally. And this is 2018. Johnny had told me he was wanting to get the money, but he couldn't afford an attorney. There's just too many people that were just had their hands in everything. Which one thing I'm curious about, you have quite a few stories about Barry Fay, Tommy's manager, in the book. Can you give us a little bit of a history how Tommy and Barry Fay met, and what have you heard about Barry Fay? Anything that's not in the book that you're able to discuss regarding Barry Fay and his character?
Yeah, I mean, as far from what I remember, Barry Fay got crossed paths with Tommy early on in his career, either during Zephyr or around that time, and I guess they hit it off. And over the years, they had a friendship, and then Barry started managing Tommy. There's a lot of accusations that Barry, well, there's some people that came out and feel that he had something to do with Tommy's passing. When I interviewed Barry for the book, he totally denied that, very very adamantly. He denied that. But that said, I mean, I did the best I could with asking questions to him, and also a gentleman named L.C. Clayton, who was the bodyguard at the time, and he was in supposedly the same room as Tommy when he passed away. And I asked him questions, and I got answers, but the thing that I've always thought would be the best thing to do is, there's that popular TV series called Cold Case. I've always wished there was or maybe there could still be a Cold Case episode about Tommy Bolin's passing, and maybe that way we would finally get the definitive answer to that. But yeah, I did the best I could trying to piece everything together, and I have a pretty good understanding, and I included really everything in the book. I didn't hold anything back, or I didn't edit anything out.
Okay.
Everything that I know is pretty much in the book. But yeah, one day, if anyone has any connections to the Cold Case TV series, someone should get in contact and send them a copy of my book and tell them that would be a good episode.
Definitely. We were talking prior. I worked in video post production, and Bill Curtis had two shows, American Justice and Cold. He also had Cold Case Files. And I'm still friends with the gentleman that owned the video production house, and that would be a connection to Bill Curtis. I can speak to him and see if there's anything that can be done on that. But yeah, I think that'd be a great thing to finally have exposed.
Yeah, I mean, say of course, though Barry's no longer with us. Tommy, of course, is no longer with. Excuse me, Tommy's no longer with us, but still, I'm sure there's people out there that were, there and could definitely add to the story, maybe fill in some blanks.
Yeah, with David Earl Brown, who's some people have attempted to drag his name through the mud on this. So he's no longer with us. He died in a car accident not long after he sold Joe Bonasuma Tommy's Les Paul.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't L.C. Clayton, didn't he pass away a couple years ago?
I've heard rumors that he passed away, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't had that. In fact, what's interesting, when I was doing work for the book, I was told he passed away back then, but when I spoke to Barry Fay, he's like, oh no, he's still alive, and he gave me his phone number, and I called him, and I think I was the first person to ever really interview him about Tommy Bolin and also his passing. That was definitely a big part of this book, was L.C. Clayton being interviewed for the first time, to the best of my knowledge.
I was it's one thing to read the words of Clayton. It's another thing to actually speak to him. What was the impression you got speaking with him? Did he seem rather broad and evasive, or was he yeah, I'll talk, sure, and straightforward? How did you find him? What was your gut telling you?
He seemed pretty straightforward, though. From the best of my memory, he didn't decline any questions. He didn't. Nothing was off base. He told me, what he remembered, but just I don't know. It doesn't really add up in the end as to what exactly happened and why the police weren't called, or like a ambulance wasn't called if it was clear that Tommy was overdosing and dying. There's just a lot of things that are.
And we're back after some technical glitches. Thank you very much, Zoom. You've got my monthly subscription now. So when the Gremlins jumped in and cut the video, you were telling us about speaking with L.C. Clayton and how he came across to you, and his status of dead or alive.
Yeah, the last I heard through one of the Tommy Bolin Facebook groups, excuse me, is that he did pass away, but I'm not 100% sure. So, Floyd, did you hear anything about that?
Yes, yeah, he definitely did pass away. Ironically, it was about 2 or 3 weeks, it seemed, after his son had been killed in a gun, by a bullet. And uh, the one thing that I know I've heard from people who were there with LC, a good friend of ours, was the drum tech, uh, really going up until the last week of that tour. And he discussed, I believe, being near Davenport, Iowa, and that Tommy had overdosed there, and they were again going to call an ambulance, call a doctor, and they were confronted in a room with uh, an incredible gun to their head from LC, and he said it was, probably, I think that's what got him off the tour. I don't know, but I will say that there was a common thing that LC would say: "Do not call. It's bad for business. Take him outside, drag him through the snow face down. This happens." And but it was a real rough thing, and I had heard different stories like that from that very last night. That there were some significant threats that were made if you called the police. Um, and again, the detail that you have in that last part, I thought was excellent, and I caught more as I listened to the audio version of it. But it really, I think it really drew an amazing picture, and that people were not sure what to do, and then of course they thought he was getting better, and he just faded.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing I had heard, and I believe you got this in your book, but initially they said he had died of natural causes. They did a second autopsy, and I believe they found the needle marks, or actually, there was a question as to whether or not he had a syringe still in his right arm, which meant somebody else had to inject that for him. Uh, and the other thing is, when LC got there, and the fella from that was the seller of connoisseur heroin and connoisseur cocaine had flown down with the group out of Denver. Tommy, at that time, they later found several punctures in his neck. And when they had gone into the bathroom and what have you, they uh, believed there was two punctures and two, injections that happened. And but he was in rough shape, and that was it that night.
Yeah, because I know in the book when I interviewed Johnny, he even mentioned a few weeks, I think, or I forget, but it was like shortly before when Tommy passed. He had an episode shortly before where he also overdosed, and that they were able to bring him back though. So it sounds like this wasn't the first time that Tommy overdosed, that he had a bad drug problem.
Right, right.
It makes me think you hire a bodyguard to keep somebody alive, and the first night of a tour, they die.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
you
it's
even
definitely.
look at his behavior. Tommy's behavior a couple days prior. He's at a bar in Miami getting drunk on margaritas and falling off a stool face first. And I mean, how hard is it to do your job? It's that always gets me. That always gets me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, it's not it seems like it's a common story, especially for back then. With it's all about making money, right? So if they can keep their star or their musician or their celebrity alive to try to make money, that's what they're going to try to do. A lot of times, people don't have the best interests of the others in mind. They don't realize it's a human being and that has family and everything like that. They're just looking at dollar signs. I mean, you could think of Kurt Cobain was the same thing. There's so many other Jimi Hendrix. There's so many people throughout the history of rock music that, there's a similar thread or a similar type of story.
And another one. I'm looking at the book behind you, Motley Crue. Look how long they kept them on the road when they should have been in rehab.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing with Tommy. Back then, there wasn't this thing called rehab like we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was okay. Well, you know what? We'll just put him in a hotel room for 3 days, let him sweat it out, and then back in business. Out of these interviews that you were doing in this book, and once again, let's get it up there. Who was your favorite person to interview? I mean, you had so many people in this.
Yeah, I mean, I would think probably, honestly, Johnny was probably the best person to speak to just because he was his brother and he was very open and honest. And I did a few interviews with him. It wasn't just one interview for the book. He was definitely a very big help. He was a very nice person. It's very sad to hear that he passed away not too long ago. But yeah, I mean, he was probably the one that I enjoyed speaking to the most. I'm just looking right now at a list of everyone I spoke to. Speaking also, Glenn Hughes was also great to speak with because he was also pretty honest, and I'm just such a fan of his too that it was great to speak with him as well for the book. And he still seems very upset about the passing, of his friend. Yeah, those were. I mean, and of course, it was just to interview also J.C. Clayton because that was the first time, like I said, I think he's ever gone on record or was ever really even interviewed about Tommy. So that was an interesting person to speak to as well for the book.
Johnny. I could definitely vouch for Johnny. The one and only Bolin Fest I've been able to go to 2018. I meet Johnny Bolin over at the Docks. What's the name of the place? They got the fan jam. 5 minutes after talking to Johnny Bolin, he invites me over to the house on the Sunday following, and I get to go in the house and see where they grew up. He comes up maybe about 3 weeks later, he comes up to Berwyn to see Glenn Hughes, and this story is great. So Johnny wanted to see some live music. So there's a couple music clubs in Berwyn. We end up at this club, and there's a thrash metal band playing. We're outside. He wants to go in. He goes to me. He goes, "How do you tell if this stuff is any good?" I mean, he didn't know. I go, "Well, what you do, you listen to the starts and stops. That's the big thing with thrash. If they're all on time and tight on that, that makes a great thrash band." So, I buy him a drink. He's watching it, not quite sure what to make of it. First band finishes. I'm outside. Couple members of the band that just finished come outside. I'm talking to them, and they go, "Oh yeah, our drummer's a major Deep Purple fan. That's his favorite band." I go, "Really? See that gentleman I'm inside with? Yeah, he's a drummer. Oh yeah, he's the brother of the guitar player that took the place of Richie Blackmore in Deep Purple." No way. I mean, it was like the whole Wayne's World. No way. I mean, it just made their day. And, that was a great time hanging out with him.
And someone else I just thought of too. It was good. Jeff Ochiltree, who was the drum tech on that last Tommy Bolin tour. He was also very honest and he had some very interesting stories to say. In fact, I believe he was in the room, sadly, when Tommy passed away.
Wow. Yeah, I'll have to find him on Facebook.
Yeah, I actually interviewed him a few years back. I did a book about John Bonham, which was a lot of drummers talking about John Bonham to commemorate. It was his 40 years after his passing was 2020. So I interviewed a bunch of drummers about him, and I interviewed Jeff Ochiltree because he was not so much John Bonham's drum tech, but he was like the assistant drum tech or something like that in '77 and also '79. So he also had some interesting things to say about working with John Bonham, but he also worked with on that Tommy Bolin tour as well in '76.
Damn, I can't imagine working for Bonzo. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy must have gone through sticks.
Yeah.
You would think you need an assistant just to get the sticks over to him. I mean, the way he used to hit. Wow. Right. Have you ever been to Bolin Fest? Have you ever made it out to Sioux City for that?
No, sadly, I remember it was like 10 or 15, I forget exactly when it was, but I was asked to attend one, and I just could. It was just not good timing, which was going on in my personal life, so I couldn't do it. And then I just never got invited again. But yeah, it would have been great to meet Johnny face to face and to also see the house and everything. I would have definitely liked that. I would have liked to have met Johnny face to face and thanked him for everything, before he passed.
Maybe this year, see what happens. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to meet Johnny, but you'd be able to meet Bobby,
Mm-hmm.
who we're helping out with this. My first Bolin Fest, the way I defined it was you meet friends you never knew you had. Floyd and I were talking on Facebook prior, and I was never a Grateful Dead fan in high school. I graduated in 1988, and by that point, anyone that I went to high school with that was into the Dead was just in it for the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only reason they were going. But after going to Bolin Fest, I can say if the community and the connections there was anything like the Grateful Dead, I totally understand it. I totally get it. If you were to go out there with a bunch of your books or whatnot, people would appreciate it. And I'm sure there's tons of people that would love to ask you tons of questions. We'll see if what the status is going into this year. Floyd, have you heard anything about an upcoming Bolin Fest?
All I know is that Bobby believes that he has a headliner, and he said the choice is obvious. So, I can't fill that in if I had to. I don't have an obvious choice. I mean, there's so many good choices.
Right.
And the one thing that Johnny did, and the Bolin family's done an excellent job of, is trying to get everybody there once. And that was really the thing. And it is amazing that 45 years later we're still all talking about it, still enjoying the music, and still finding little bits and pieces and nubs. People find cassettes in their coat pocket and things like that, and like, oh man, I didn't even know I had that here. And so there's still, things that are coming up that's interesting and new and that sort of thing. So it's good to see Bobby picking up the torch here and running with it. So
Nice. Yeah, if you could pull it off, man, power to the kid. And I'm sure in the community, anything that anyone can do to help the kid, he's got everyone's support.
You bet.
Yeah. It's Greg, 40 books, couple on the New York Jets. How'd that Aaron Rodgers thing work out for you?
Oh, it worked out absolutely fantastic.
Well, Brett Favre worked out better for you, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they had a winning record with Brett Favre, but they didn't make the playoffs. They actually collapsed that year, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just a typical Jets move right there.
As a Cub fan, I know exactly where you're coming from. There's definitely the parallels. So what's I know you just I think your last book was at the book on Rat.
Yeah, I did a few books last year. I did a book about Rat, and I also did a book about, it was called Lead Clones, which were about all the Led Zeppelin ripoff bands of the 80s. That came out late last year. And what's interesting is by doing that book, something I didn't really know that much that that definitely became very clear by doing all the research was Led Zeppelin was also very guilty of ripping off a lot of artists throughout their career as well. And that's just kind of come to light because of YouTube. People put these very interesting YouTube things together where they'll play a Led Zeppelin song and then play the song that it was that they copied from. There's a lot of blues artists, and you even like look back at when the Led Zeppelin albums first came out, they weren't even properly crediting a lot of these artists, and they had to get sued in order to even get their names on it, which is pretty crazy. I mean, I guess back then, because no internet or anything, people could just get away with things like that, whereas you couldn't really get away with it as easily now. So that was definitely very eye-opening, and that's that's a book that is a underrated book. It's called Lead Clones, which I interviewed people that were in bands that have been accused of being disciples of Led Zeppelin. They had some very interesting things to say. And it's actually I include and in it I mentioned that there's a Tommy Bolin song that sounds a bit Led Zeppelin-y. It right now slips my mind, but I'm gonna look it up quick. I'm gonna tell you what that is to give you Just a little taste of that. Hang on one second.
Alrighty.
I'm gonna find this for you. Let's see. You know what? While I'm looking it up, I want you both to take a guess. What Tommy Bolin related song do you think sounds Zeppelin-y? Before I tell you what my selection was.
Oh, let's see. I'll take Wild Dogs, the guitar intro.
Okay. And Floyd, would you like to go with something?
I'm going to go with an obvious guess off the top of my head, but I'm going to say Teaser.
Okay. I went with Shake the Devil
Really?
Eh,
because of the riff. I thought it sounded kind of like a Zeppelin-y thing. And then also I included on the list Moxie Train, which I believe Tommy did not play on. I believe Johnny Bolin said that he did not think that Tommy actually played on that song, although it was on the Ultimate box set. That's what we
Right.
learned in this book. Johnny Bolin said he did not think that Tommy actually played on that song, that he was not credited properly for that.
Hmm.
wow.
So those
How
are my
about
two selections. Yeah.
now there's been debate on whether he played on that band Coven.
Okay, I didn't even hear of that. Did he play on that? I didn't even heard of that before, to be honest with you.
He'd allegedly done I can't remember if it was full guitar part or a couple guitar solos on that album, much like he did with Moxie, and that was
Right.
allegedly the last thing that he had ever recorded. Coven is still around and out and doing stuff as a band. You know, they're doing the whole goth witchcraft thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I was curious if you had heard anything about that at all.
No, I
Um,
just know about Moxie. Supposedly, Tommy was paid in cocaine for doing the sessions. That's a pretty famous story that's in the book.
Right.
That I remember hearing that. Yeah.
and one that still
Yeah.
continues to this day. Living in Chicago, I hear a lot of Al Jorgensen ministry stories, and there was one session that he did for what was it? A case of Budweiser, a pepperoni pizza, and 2 grams of bad cocaine was how he'd written it in the contract, and he got it, and he did the album. I can't remember who that was for.
Yeah, and there's also,
Um,
of course, the famous thing with I believe Eddie Van Halen was paid just with a 6 pack of beer for his contributions to Michael Jackson's "Beat It," I believe is the story.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. And they asked him, aren't you upset that you weren't paid? And he said, well, I never asked to be paid. I wanted to do that. And I was, and so anyway, yeah, he did well with that.
Mhm.
that's kind of the one thing that always strikes me with Tommy. Growing up in the Midwest, I mean, Iowa's just right next door. Here's this kid who grows up in the land of cornfields, which is pretty much Iowa.
Mhm.
Just able to play his guitar and have somewhat of a living at it. That's just kind of the Midwest dream. And
Mhm.
he always,
Yeah.
yeah, he always stays with me more than say Ted Nugent, who lived in Detroit and then also lived in Chicago for a while. My dad got kicked out of high school with him. They knew each other. Yeah, but I always felt more of a connection to Tommy, just having grown up in the boonies myself. The Led Zeppelin book you were just talking about. Did you interview Kingdom Come or Greta Van Zandt in that for that one?
Yeah, for that book, there's definitely parts. There's substantial parts about Greta Van Fleet, and
That's it.
also and also the band called Kingdom Come. I also talk about Whitesnake in the book. That right there is a Tommy Bolin connection because of David Coverdale, of course.
Yeah,
But yeah, I interviewed and also by doing that book, I'm going to tell you the title right now. The full title of that book is Lead Clones: The Led Zeppelin Imitator Craze of the '80s and Beyond. That's the official title. And by doing research for that book, I came across a band that I kind of forgot about that I actually found out that I still enjoy, and that's the band Badlands, which had Jakey Lee on guitar.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
their album from 1989 is just self-titled, and that to me is a great album. That's a great forgotten rock album, and it has a Zeppelin-y feel, but it's not like a shameless Zeppelin ripoff. And I was
right.
able to I interviewed the bassist from Badlands for the book. Greg Chiason is his name. So he's one
Yeah,
of the
it's
gentlemen I interviewed. I also interviewed Rick Emmett from the band Triumph because People think that some of the 70s Triumph material sounds a bit like Zeppelin. I also interviewed a gentleman named Alan Niven, who was the manager, producer, and writer of a lot of Great White songs, because Great White was considered to be a prime Led Zeppelin ripoff type band. So, yeah, I did
Yeah.
several exclusive interviews for the book.
Yeah, I remember seeing the very first appearance of Kingdom Come on the Monsters of Rock tour, 1988. They were
Right.
opening band, Alpine Valley, and they got booed heavily. They got so booed.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I was never a big fan of theirs. I'm going to be honest about that.
Yeah, I couldn't get into them. I was like, well, we have a Led Zeppelin. How about, there were always some bands that were more Zeppelin-y than the Zeppelin bands, if that makes any sense.
I also I interviewed also Eddie Trunk, who of course is a famous metal and also rock personality for that book. He had some very interesting things to say. He discussed actually Blue Murder, which has John Sykes, who just sadly passed away. I know Eddie's a big fan of Blue Murder, so he talked about them and their Zeppelin connection or Zeppelin sounding songs.
Yeah, then the Badlands album, good luck finding that one anywhere anymore.
Yeah, there's a whole controversy about that.
Yeah, it's a couple places have tried to re-release it, but then it's pulled from the market after a week or two.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've heard this. I'm sure you've heard the stories about why on that one.
I have heard the stories, but I don't think it's ever been officially. I believe Eddie Trunk once asked Jakey Lee and also Greg Chiasson about that, and they did not confirm it. So until it's officially confirmed, I don't know. It's a whole controversy. Whoever's interested in finding about this, look up. You could just do a search online and find out what the supposed reason is, but it's never been fully confirmed. So until it's fully confirmed, they should really be selling it. That's just my theory.
I agree. I mean, I didn't have it on its initial, but I did have it, and my Camaro tape deck ate it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then nowadays, good luck trying to find it.
Yeah.
What books do you got upcoming? What are you working on that you can talk about?
Well, I just signed a deal. I'm doing next year a book about. I did an earlier book, one of my early books called Grunge is Dead, which was about all the 90s grunge bands from Seattle. This next book is going to be about all the 90s alternative rock bands that were not grunge, talking about like Smashing Pumpkins, Faith No More, Primus, Ministry, we just talked about, Jane's Addiction. Those bands it's going to focus primarily on. I did about 60 interviews for that. And that's coming out late. It's coming out this year, late 2025. I think October is when it's coming out.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's my next the next book I'd like to talk about. That's it.
Nice. Yeah, when after that comes out, I'd love to hook back up with you. And you mentioned a couple bands where me being in Chicago, you'd have to be unconscious to not have had any interactions with them. Ministry and the Pumpkins. So if somebody wanted to find your books, your works, what's your website?
The best, well, if you want to check out any of my book, just go on Amazon, just do a search for Greg Prato. I have 40 books out. I've done books about, we talked about John Bonham, Tommy Bolin, of course. I've done books about Kiss. I've done books, Primus, Mark Lanigan. I'm looking at all my books right now. King's X, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. I worked on them, worked with them on a book. So, yeah, I've done a lot of books over the years. And to check out what I'm currently up to, just go to, what used to be called Twitter is now called X, right? Isn't it X now, I believe?
I think all the cool kids are calling it X now. And yeah.
So if you go to x.com/Greg Prato Writer, that's GregPrato, and then the word writer. I'm always posting my latest articles. I write regularly for several sites like Ultimate Guitar, All Music, Song Facts. Those ones are the ones I write primarily for. Also a site called Brave Words I also write for. I'm always posting my latest interviews, and I do lists and things. I'm always posting the links there. So x.com/Greg Prato Writer to check out what I'm currently up to. I also have links on there that take you to my Amazon page that has all my books that you could order and check out. Most of my books are available, again, paperback, hardcover, Kindle, and also a lot of them are narrated by me as audio versions as well.
Fantastic. And just to let people out there know, Greg really gets into some specific subgenres of a band. Iron Maiden, you write about
Yep.
a 2 or 3 year period before they had Bruce Dickinson. The book on the Scorpions. A lot of people don't know about them pre-blackout album.
Yep, in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a forgotten era of them, and the way you're just able to focus on these interesting points in a band history and music history that no one else is touching. I can't thank you enough for it, and I will be sending you a reminder on that topic you and I discussed prior to recording with the New York bands in the 80s,
Okay.
90s. Floyd, anything you would like to add?
No, I just appreciate getting to meet you here and discussing what we have. And the book and the audio, I found both unique journeys. And it is, for me, it was always, like I said, it was a hard topic really to go into. And but I think it was superb. This audio, when I went through that, I've really gone through it 2 times, which is 14 hours. But it's been kind of interesting in that what I noticed that was a very definitive moment for you in that book, it seemed to me, was when you finished and when you said the end.
Yeah.
And I found it chilling. I thought, damn, it is the end, but for a lot of us, I think the music itself and the legends have lived on, but rough way to go.
It's sad. You always think what Tommy would have gone on to do if he had lived and if he was able to successfully kick his drug habit. It's always a thing that the whole entire what if question definitely weighs
Right.
heavy on Tommy Bolin.
And you also relate a lot of the optimism that Tommy took with him going into Miami. And it seemed like there was a point where he felt he was going down there. He was going to get his life together. He was going to do all the right things. And I think it was really the cut and dry, part of addiction that, all those good intentions don't get you off the stuff. And I think it's great that I guess as time's gone on, that other people have found ways and have found sobriety and what have you when they needed to. So,
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Curt and Floyd, for having me on. I appreciate that.
Greg, we appreciate you. And once again, I'd like to remind everybody that we have 30 autographed copies for sale. All profits going to help Bobby Bolin. Floyd, you and I will be talking. Greg, absolute pleasure. I know I'll be reaching out to you in the future with some interview requests on some of your other books. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you're doing with for music and your excellent
Great. Thank
work.
you very much. Thank you. I definitely
bet.
appreciate those kind
thank
words.
you.
Great. Take care, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.